Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Sam Hall.
The year is 2260. The place, Babylon 5.
This review contains spoilers.
Babylon 5 was a science fiction series from the 90s that bears the unfortunate burden of being one of the runts of what was already at the time considered to be a much maligned genre for popular television. It had plenty of hardcore fans but never reached the zenith of popularity attributed to Star Trek, Star Wars or even Stargate SG-1. Babylon 5 occupied that forgettable middle ground, a space it shared with the likes of Farscape and Andromeda. If you could look past the weak Trek clone episodes and hammy acting, there were some gemstones among the rubble. In fact, what Babylon 5 did incredibly well was structured world building, three-dimensional characters that you could actually care about, and an arc that, for the most part, worked pretty well. What the show became famous for was Lovecraftian apocalyptic portents, ancient aliens, I think I've lost some credibility by using that meme, and political intrigue. The Telepath subplots were an aspect of the show I often neglected appreciation for, but in recent years I've really come to appreciate Babylon 5's approach to how psychic abilities would be handled in a real-world scenario. This is the focus of today's episode, the way that the lead writer Joe Michael Straczynski and the B5 team were able to create a believable setting where telepathy might actually exist. The Cambridge Dictionary describes telepathy as the ability to know what is in someone else's mind, or to communicate with someone mentally without using words or other physical signals. A person with this ability is called a telepath, and as far as world science currently understands, they don't exist. So let's test out that theory. Right, I'll give you a moment. What am I thinking? Okay, unless your answer was a forklift truck eating a jam sandwich and wearing a bikini, then we'll take it as read you're probably not a telepath. The lead writer Straczynski wanted to reflect on how he thought the human race would react to the existence of people that can do just that. Of course, it's nice to think that we would all accept them as brothers and sisters, but Straczynski likes to use real-world examples of how we usually treat minority groups. Telepaths can read your mind, learn your secrets, turn people against you. Obviously, the rest of the human race isn't going to react rationally to that realisation. So, in the B5 universe, telepaths are used as scapegoats and treated like dirt. Just have a quick flick through human history and take your pick as to what this might actually be an allegory for. The choices are endless.
What are you looking at, freak? I said, what are you
So rather than trying to retread old ground and trying to speculate on which of these groups telepaths are supposed to represent the most, I'd like to point out a fictional universe that kind of got there first with that kind of allegory, and that's the mutants in Marvel's X-Men series. Just as in that universe, in B5 there are good telepaths, bad telepaths, and innocent telepaths who just want to lead a normal life. What is interesting in this universe is how the bad telepaths are simultaneously liberators and oppressors of their own kind. Meet the Psi-Corps, an organisation dedicated to rounding up rogue telepaths, which we call blips in this universe, and forcefully indoctrinating them to become productive members of society. This has a dual purpose. On the one hand, it means telepaths can be closer to their own kind. On the other, it keeps them regulated so that non-telepaths, who are nicknamed mundanes in the B5 universe, can feel more relaxed about their existence. In secret, the government-controlled Psi-Corps is actually plotting to overthrow the mundanes and take their place as Homo Superior, the next stage of human evolution, much like in the X-Men universe. Clearly there are comparisons to be made between the Psi-Corps and authoritarian organisations. In world, the gloves that they wear serve a purpose, as touch is said to enhance their psychic abilities. Visually, they can be linked to popular representations of the Gestapo, the Nazi intelligence agency. You may also have noticed the use of newspeak. Along with blips and mundanes, we also have teeps for telepaths and teeks for the less common telekinetics. Reading someone's mind is called a scan, and attempting to shield it from someone is called a block.
She's blocking me.
Babylon 5 uses the Psi-Corps as a scary reflection of how dehumanising people can go too far. The Psi-Corps are willing to use their own to further their agenda. During the course of the show, we see how telepaths are used and abused as scientific experiments or weapons of war. This leads to resistance movements formed largely of telepaths who want to be free from the prejudice and free from the icy hand of the oppressive Psi-Corps. The Corps is dedicated to a specific kind of order which can be unsettling. When they find out you're a telepath, you're given 3 choices. Join the Corps, become part of a regime that strips you of all your freedom, go to jail for the rest of your life, or take debilitating drugs that suppress your abilities but also can cause extreme bouts of depression. One of the lead characters in Babylon 5, Commander Susan Ivanova, resents the Psi-Corps because her own mother was unfortunate enough to suffer the consequences of the third option.
Anyway, she came downstairs and she just watched me play. She had the strangest look on her face, like she was trying to burn that moment into her mind so she would never ever forget it. I'll come for you soon. So I went, and I waited, and I waited, and it got dark, and my father came home, and then some other men showed up. It wasn't until later that I found out that she took her own life. That she had come down to watch me play so that she could have one perfect memory to take with her into heaven.
So there are a lot of major and minor telepathic characters in Babylon 5, but for the most part, the life of a telepath is represented by 3 major characters throughout the run of the show. Talia Winter, during seasons 1 and 2, a member of the Psi-Corps who wrestles between her loyalty to the Corps and a loyalty to her friends. Lita Alexander from seasons 3 to 5, who is more openly opposed to the Corps and has a hidden power that grows as the series progresses.
I'm tired of being pushed around, Captain.
And Alfred Bester, the face of the Psi-Corps and one of the more popular villains of the franchise. It's the character of Bester that most exemplifies the fantastic world building that Straczynski brings to the show, and yes, it is played by Walter Koenig, famous for playing Chekhov in the original Star Trek. Whilst Talia and Lita are more sympathetic portrayals, Bester is a man who demands to be the one who we love to hate. He is Babylon 5's answer to Iago, the Machiavellian manipulator that likes to play both sides against the middle for his own ends. Bester delights in taunting the main characters whilst feigning ignorance for all his crimes. If you're confused about how a group of people like the Telepaths can be at the same time a repressed minority and members of a powerful manipulative organisation, look no further than the way that Alfred Bester is represented in the show. He who plays up to the prejudice of the largely mundane population while secretly planning to overthrow them. To Bester, the suffering are his sheep, whom he wishes to care for up until the point that they no longer serve a purpose and become dispensable. But like all great characters in literature, he's not entirely without sympathy. It's revealed that his ultimate agenda is to benefit the lives of all telepaths, even if he views many of them as expendable, if it serves the greater good. He's also revealed to have experienced true love, and not unlike Mr. Freeze in the Batman franchise, Bester's better side is trapped in stasis, suffering from a condition he seeks to cure.
I miss you.
Nevertheless, Koenig's cold, calculating portrayal of Alfred Bester made him the villain audiences love to hate. But while Bester represented the darker side of telepaths in the show, there were those who dreamed of a better future where telepaths weren't just doomed to a life of oppression. Season 2 of the show introduced the Underground Railroad, covert operatives that would liberate telepaths from the Psi-Corps to give them a new chance at life and freedom off-world. This would often prove to be futile, as the Corps would employ bloodhound units who were trained to track down these escapees and return them to indentured servitude. Season 5 would go a step further and give this railroad a leader, Byron, who would be idolised as a martyr. Byron was saint-like in his demeanour, dedicated to a kind of radical peace protest in the hope that he might one day give human telepaths a world of their own. His vision was doomed to failure, as were the attempts by Lita Alexander to pass on his torch. The Byron subplot would turn out to be one of the less popular aspects of the show and is often cited as one of the main reasons the 5th season didn't live up to the quality of the previous 4. In spite of this, it would be the jumping off point for an expanded universe storyline of a war between mundane humans, the Psi-Corps, and those telepaths seeking freedom from both. There have even been novels written about the Telepath War, which are considered canon even by the lead writer Straczynski. So going beyond the world building and characterisation of the telepaths in Babylon 5, I think the producers set themselves an interesting task in trying to visualise telepathy and telekinesis on such a limited budget. In some ways, the limitations benefited the production. Actors could utilise their skills to imagine not only what it would be like to read minds, but also what it would be like if you couldn't shut off the voices in your head. Telekinesis is perhaps less interesting on a filmic level, however, and as long as barely visible wire existed, so too would dodgy telekinetic effects. B5 would try all kinds of creative methods to explore psychic power beyond reading minds and lifting objects. The show also explores how one might resist a mind reading. In one episode, they discuss how people will sing nursery rhymes and work out puzzles and complex sums to try and limit the interference of someone reading your mind and trying to pick out secrets.
Where is it?
Harry had a little lamb. The lamb face was white as snow.
There's also an interesting subplot involving the character Michael Garibaldi, who becomes the unfortunate victim of a Manchurian candidate plot, a sleeper agent or spy who doesn't know he's a spy.
If they miss even one injection,
They die.
Well, thank you. Not that you had much choice.
In Season 5, however, one effect was used which, in my opinion, cheapens what the series had previously achieved. In the episode in question, we get a visual of a representation of what one mind probing another might look like. This dated CGI effect takes something away from the fantastic job the series had previously done in leaving my imagination to fill in the gaps. True, this is a visual medium, but you don't have to use special effects to achieve what the actors have already succeeded in doing so well. The power of telepathy lies in its subtle nature, surprising its victims who can't quite comprehend the magnitude of what's happening and what it can achieve, or the suffering a telepath must endure for the sake of making mundanes feel comfortable. Of all these elements, by far the greatest creation is the Psi-Corps. Yes, it's true, the references to historical oppressive regimes does lack subtlety. But what makes them interesting is that they are an inhumane organisation the civilised world is willing to tolerate for the sake of their own prejudice. Fellow human beings rounded up and herded like sheep simply because they were born different. This kind of self-reflection is too powerful to ignore, and the references to propaganda and dehumanisation are too near the knuckle to be dismissed outright.
You were raised by the core, clothed by the core. We are your father and your mother. Don't force us to do this.
So I'd like it to go on record that I didn't really appreciate this aspect of the show in the past, and I didn't give it the credit it deserved. So that's kind of the whole motivation for why I decided to bring you this video. Anyway, that's it for this time on Films on That. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.